Students, I welcome you to the last unit of Block 2, that is unit number 8, and this particular unit deals with different kind of theories of conflicts. So the question comes to your mind that what you are going to learn in this unit. So you are going to learn in this unit about getting familiar with the various theories about the causes and sources of conflict, and you will also able to know about the debates within the different theories of conflict. So first you will understand, you will familiarize yourself with the various theories about the causes and sources of conflict, and secondly you will also know the debates and within the theories of the conflict. So what are the different theories of conflict? The nature theorist of the conflict, they emphasize that human beings are primarily affected by genes. So conflict is basically in their nature. So this nature theorist, according to nature theorist, it is in the human being's gene, which is because of that it is the inborn nature of a human being to be in the conflict situation. And the nature theorist also insists that conflict emerges from the way society is organized. So the emergence of conflict is also dependent upon the setting of the society in which the concerned individual is living. So society also plays a vital role in emergence of the conflict. Now after the nature theories, we get inherency theories. What is inherency theories? Inherency theories say that human nature as a source of conflict are of the view that violence is inevitable, it is widespread, and it is universal, irrespective of social structures. It means it is inherent in the human being or within the individual, it has to be there. So this human nature as a source of conflict, it is because of that view that violence is inevitable. You cannot deny it, you cannot live it. It is widespread, it is universal, and it has no relation with the social structure. Irrespective of the social structure, emergence of violence is inevitable. Second theory is contingency theory. What contingency theory says that according to this theory, conflict is not only located inside the human being but also outside it. So conflict is thus dependent on factors which are external to an individual. So there could be two kind of factors which are responsible for the conflict. One is inside, that is because of your gene, because of your inherent nature, and secondly all those external factors, the society settings, the environment, all those things also affect the emergence of conflict, and they are known as external factors. Then the third theory is interactionist theory. Under this theory, human behavior is basically a combination of both genetic and social structure conditions. So it is also saying that in different way that because of your behavior is governed because of your internal factors as well as external factors. So internal factors are because of your genetic regions, and external factors arise because of social structure condition or societal conditions in which an individual is physically staying. So now we try to understand what is the relation between human nature and conflict. So when we try to study any kind of relationship or a cause and effect relationship between a human nature and conflict, we find that it basically focuses on human behavior at two different levels, at the level of individual and as well as collective level as the source of the conflict. Then we have biological and socio-biological theories also. According to biological theory approaches, source of conflict and violence is basically in the human genes. They emphasize on biological factors or inborn traits of a human being as one of the reasons for the sources of the conflict. So there are some factors which are biologically determined and they are seen to be responsible for interpersonal and intergroup violence. Means your interaction with either other individual or with you are a part of a group. So because of that, so interpersonal and intergroup violence is also because of biologically determined factors. Another theory besides biological and socio-biological theory is basically an instinct theory. According to this theory, your aggressive behavior is basically rooted in a human instinct, and instinctive impulses are one of the reasons or sources of human aggression and because of destructive behavior. So instinct theory basically says that the reason, the logic, the rationale behind the aggressive behavior is basically rooted in human instinct, and instinctive impulse is the source of human aggression and destructive behavior. Now let us look at another approach. It is basically based on Darwin. So what Darwin and social Darwinism says that it explains, according to this concept, it explains that conflict is in terms of natural selection, means the survival of the fittest and inherent aggression in the human being. So because of Darwin concept, there is a one condition of natural selection, that is survival of the fittest and related to the inherent aggression in the human being. This concept also stresses that competition and conflict, please remember, competition and conflict, they play significant role in human society. So when competition and conflict, they play a vital role in the human society, so obviously the origin of conflict may take place. So in this, what we have gone through is, we have gone through different set of theories. The first was that nature theories. In the nature theories, we got inherency theories, contingency theories, interactionist theories, and then we have an understanding about biological and socio-biological theories. Then instinct theory. What is instinct theory? It says that aggressive behavior is rooted in human instinct, and instinctive impulse is the source of human aggression and destructive behavior of an individual. Then we have seen Darwin concept, because of natural selection, the survival of the fittest and inherent aggression in the human being. And this concept also stresses that competition and conflict, both of them play very significant role in human society. Now when these theories came, along with that some criticism also came for this natural concept like biological and socio-biological theories. So what were those critics? The critics came from anthropologists and sociologists. So anthropologists and sociologists, they believe that human behavior or human instinct cannot be traced to your gene or your biological roots. It says that human behavior or human instinct cannot be traced to biological roots. And psychoanalytic theory emphasizes that individual experiences during the period of early socialization basically determines an individual or human personality. There is another social learning theory which stresses that aggression has nothing to do with your gene or your biological root, rather it is a product of social learning. So learning is however dependent upon the conditioning. So if a favorable condition is there, then there may not be violent behavior or conflict like situation. So basically the conflict, according to these socio-analyst psychoanalysis theories, they say that the origin of the conflict has to do with the learning, and your learning is dependent upon the conditioning. So any kind of aggression which leads to conflict has nothing to do with your gene or your biological root, rather it is a product of social learning, and your learning is dependent upon your social conditioning. There is another theory, that is observational learning theory. So observational learning theory says that an individual, you learn from others, and by way of how you learn, by way of observation of actions of others. So we also learn through languages also. So all those things means the theorists, anthropologists and sociologists, then psychoanalytic theory, then social learning theory and observation learning theory, all these theories basically deny that the reason, the cause behind violent behavior or any kind of aggression has nothing to do with your genetic roots or your biological root. Rather, it is dependent upon experiences, learning, socialization, your acclimatization, all those things that you learn in a society, it determines your behavior, and in turn it stresses that aggression has nothing to do with your genes, rather it is a product of social learning, and learning is dependent on conditioning. Now after this, when we have seen the criticism of biological roots theory, we look at different theories proposed by psychological and sociological approach. So what are those approaches and theories? According to psychoanalyst, unfulfilled psychological needs may incite an individual to become violent via instinctive impulses. So psychoanalysts say that unfulfilled psychological needs could incite an individual or human to violence through instinctive impulse. Now let us look at motivational theories. In motivational theories, the origin of aggression is in blocked energy of frustration, which is a product of varied social and psychological settings. So according to this theory, depending upon an individual's social or psychological setting, a kind of frustration is basically grouped, and it becomes a blocked energy of frustration, and as an output of that blocked energy of frustration, the origin of aggression takes place. Aggression is also a reaction to any kind of external stimuli or stimulus. Hence, the social environment is also one of the reasons or having different factors which are responsible for activation of these physiological mechanism. This particular perspective of socio and psychological means the socio-psychological perspective, it stresses on the process of group formation and differentiation. And what it says that groups try to differentiate themselves from the others, and in this process misperceptions, stereotyping or dehumanization may play a vital role, which can further create any kind of aggression and individual's behavior, which will in turn into violent conflict. So because of socio-psychological perspective, which says that because violence and all those your aggression behavior, it may have some socio-psychological logics behind it. Accordingly, it focuses on different processes of group formation and differentiation, and these groups basically try to differentiate themselves from the others, and in this process different type of misperceptions, stereotyping or dehumanization may take place, which play a vital role in leading to violent conflict. So these are the different propositions of psychological and socio-psychological theories about aggression behavior and violence of conflict. Now we further go for psychological perspective and what the different thoughts were given by leading psychologists. So aggression is basically carried out in the name of self-preservation of an individual. Human beings have two kind of basic instinct: the life instinct and the death instinct. The life instinct desires pleasure, and the death instinct leads to destructive behavior, both towards individual oneself as well as towards the society or towards other people or the world in general. So the human urge for self-destruction is basically directed towards to destroy others and preserve the self. So why this violence and aggression behavior comes? It is because of basically two kind of instinct that an individual has. The one is life instinct, another is death instinct. The life instinct basically looks for pleasure, whereas opposite to that, death instinct leads to emergence of destructive behavior. And this destructive behavior is towards individual self as well as towards others individual or other social group or society or world in general. So any kind of human urge towards self-destruction is directed basically towards destroying others so as one can preserve for safety or preserve of oneself. So this is one approach. Another approach of civil statement of violence of 1986 is statement came up with the following conclusions. What were the conclusions? It is scientifically incorrect to say that we have intended or inherited any kind of tendency to make war from our animal ancestors. So it denies that. Secondly, it is scientifically incorrect to say that war or any other violent behavior is genetically programmed in our human nature. So because of this proven scientifically incorrect, this nature theorist, the concept of nature theorist or biological roots or genetic root of aggression behavior is basically denied. The third is, it is also scientifically incorrect to say that course of human evolution, in course of human evolution there is selection for aggressive behavior more than other kind of behavior. So it is also a kind of natural progression of behavior that an individual select for aggressive behavior more than other kind of behavior. So it is also scientifically incorrect that it says that because of your genetic or biological root any individual is getting into violent conflict. Also it is scientifically incorrect to say that human have a violent brain. So this is also proven wrong. And it is also scientifically incorrect to say that war is caused by instinct or any other single motive. So all these scientifically proven facts basically deny the theories proposed by genetic or behavioral aspect, that it is scientifically incorrect to say that the course of human evolution there has been a selection for aggression of behavior other than any kind of behavior. So when this thing is scientifically proven that it is incorrect, then all those propositions of the previous theories have not been found correct. Now let us look at another theory which is known as social process theory. What is social process theory? This particular theory see conflict and conflict resolution as a process. Means according to this theory, the conflict and conflict resolution is basically a process oriented concept. So one of the leading proposition of this theory was Adam Smith. According to Adam Smith, the fabric of social relationship could lead to emergence of several principles which could be applied to conflict resolution. So according to him, markets were allowed to function naturally. They could grow and resolve the conflict between humans. Another proposition by Strauss, they examined the resolution of the conflict and the establishment of negotiated order. He also suggested that human institutions should grow through a process of negotiation. Negotiation is now a fundamental process through which society was formed, and when the society is formed through this process of negotiation, so it can also be constantly reconstituted. The next theory after social process theory is basically a system theory. So system theory says that conflict is nothing but a system of interlinked relationship. What is the system of relationship? It basically seeks to find out different parts, different notion of social system, that is social institutions which are working basically together. Means a part of social institutions which is in part of social system and they are working together, and one of the part of the social system may also function and they may also dysfunction. So when they dysfunction, they are not in complete harmony, and because of that, origin of concept of conflict takes place and conflict resolution comes into the picture. So conflict resolution comes into the picture after the emergence of the conflict. And why this is? Because when we have social system as a whole which can function also and dysfunction, so when they dysfunction, then they are not in complete harmony, and because of that, so concept of conflict emerges, and when the concept of conflict emerges, then conflict resolution also takes place for resolution of that particular conflict. So we have gone through social process theories and system theory. For our further discussion about violent behavior and emergence of conflict. For your detailed understanding, I would again re-emphasize that social process theory basically says that conflict and conflict resolution are basically a kind of social process. So Adam Smith, Strauss and system theory, they all deal with social process theories. And social process theory basically, especially if you look at the system theory, it says that conflict is a system of relationship and it is a part of social system, and the social system can function as well as dysfunction. So when they dysfunction, so they are not in complete harmony. Because of that, the concept of conflict emerges, and when the concept of conflict emerges, then conflict resolution comes also into the picture for resolution of the conflict. Now let us look at some other experts. So Dean Pruitt and Jeffrey Rubin, they have given different strategies for dealing with the conflict. So what are those strategies? They proposes basically 5 different strategies for dealing with the conflict. What are those? First is contending, second is yielding, third is problem solving, fourth is withdrawing, and fifth and the last one is inaction. So these are the 5 strategies proposed by them for dealing with the conflict, and they are contending, yielding, problem solving, withdrawing and inaction. So social structure theories. Now what we see in the social structure theories is that according to this theory, it believes that the way society is organized or the divisions within the society, because of this thing, because of this structure, there might be emergence of conflict. And these would also include socio-economic aspect as well as such as race, religion, ethnicity, all those things also compound towards emergence of violence. Structural violence theory. Structural violence theory says that conflict is inherent in any kind of social structure. Means the basic foundation of this theory is that conflict is inbuilt, it is inherent in any kind of social structure in the world, and social structures and institutions, they also create or cause structural violence. Now let us look at some of the propositions given by famous theorists, and one of them is Johann Galton. Johann Galton says that he basically distinguished between 3 kinds of violence. Galton is basically credited for giving 3 different kinds of violence, and these 3 different kinds of violence are direct or overt, indirect, structural and cultural. So the first is direct or overt violence, second is indirect or structural violence, and the third is cultural violence. So what is direct violence? Basically direct violence is nothing but it is intends to harm other individual or group directly, and it is also responsible for the experience of structural violence. Now what is the second one? Second one is basically structural violence. Structural violence happens in institutions, system, social structure which discriminate between individual or groups and deprive them from their fundamental rights and the ability to satisfy the basic human need such as survival, well-being, safety, respect, freedom, etc. And finally the cultural violence. It is basically this violence is used to justify, to legitimize overt and structural violence of human, religion, language, arts, education. So any kind of violence related with religion, language, arts, education, etc. in human being or any kind of individual ideology. So all these kind of violence are basically related with cultural violence. So according to Johann Galton, he had distinguished 3 different kind of violence that we have just now deliberated upon. The first is direct or overt violence, second is indirect or structural violence, and the third is cultural violence. After this, we find another theory that is proposing for the reason and causes of violence is basically human needs theory. It was propounded by John Burton. So what John Burton says that he says that human beings have certain basic, fundamental or universal human needs. So when those are not met, when these basic universal human needs are not met or they remain unsatisfied, it will definitely lead to conflict. And the process of conflict resolution should look into satisfy these basic human needs of the individual, or people or group who are involved in the conflict. So human need theory basically emphasizes on satisfaction of basic or universal human need. So any kind of action or any institution or any structure or any process or any system, social system, when it is leading to any kind of obstruction which leads to unsatisfaction or non-satisfaction of basic human universal needs, then it will lead for emergence of conflict. So after human need theory, we get another theory of understanding the concept of the conflict is basically resource theory. So as the name suggests, under resource theory, the origin and the cause of the conflict is when one party wants the resource the other has, or more parties want the same resource, means more than one parties or group, they are fighting for the same resource. So resource theory is basically for scarcity of the resource and more than one parties are fighting for holding that particular resource. So what we were discussing about the resource theory, that people generally fight over scarcity of resources because either they are limited or they don't have the proper access to those valuable resources. These resources could be tangible also, intangible also. So as the name suggests, resource theory is basically fighting by either individual or group or the parties for the resources which are scarce in the nature. So scarcity of the resources is basically one and the prime reason for origin of the conflict. So after resource theory, another theory that gives the concept and the understanding and the basic premise behind the conflict is relative deprivation theory. Very clearly you can understand about this relative deprivation theory. So difference between what one expects in the life and what he or she eventually gets. It says that relative deprivation theory, an individual in the life is expecting something because of its setting in the social system or the life one is leading, and what he or she is basically getting. So the difference between expectation and actual is basically leading for relative deprivation. So people feel deprived when they get much less from what they were expecting or what they have been promised. Same thing, what you are expecting or what you have been promised, and if you compare with what you are actually getting, so difference between expectation and actual receipt is basically leading for generation of conflict, and this is the basic premise behind relative deprivation theory. So this difference between what you have been promised and what you are expecting is basically leads to aggression and make people to enter into conflict with others. So three important things that we have understood here, that one is human needs theory, and these theories are interrelated with each other. Let us try to understand. One is human needs theory, another is resource theory, and third is relative deprivation theory. Human needs theory says that every individual has some basic universal human needs. So when these basic universal human needs are either not satisfied or there is a gap between that, this can lead to the conflict. So when individual basic human needs are not met or they remain unsatisfied, it will lead for conflict. So physiological needs, hunger, food, all those things will come under basic or universal human need. So when these are not met or they remain unsatisfied, it will definitely can lead to the conflict. So process of conflict resolution, it should start with looking into all those measures, all those steps which are directed towards satisfying the basic human needs of the people or groups, those who are involved in the conflict. Second is resource theory. Conflict according to this theory is because of scarcity of resources, and when there are scarcity of resources, one party wants the major share of the resource at the cost of the others, or when more than one parties or group of the parties, they are fighting for the same resource which are scarce. they are limited. So when the resources are limited and more than one party are basically fighting for holding those resources, so conflict is emerged. So people fight over resources because they are scarce or they are limited, because they are scarce or they are limited, and resources can be tangible also and they can be intangible also. So because of scarce resources or because of limitation of the resources, the resource theory proposes that this can be one of the valid reasons for emergence of conflict. Finally, we come for relative deprivation theory. As the name suggests, that difference between relative deprivation means what an individual is expecting and what the one is actually getting. If the difference is that, and the difference is huge, then it will definitely lead for aggressive behavior and it will compel the people to enter into conflict with others. So people feel deprived when they get much less from what they have been expecting or what they have been promised. So this gap between the expectation and the promise and the actual that they are getting, as this difference will get wider, as the difference will get higher, it will definitely lead for aggressive behavior and people will definitely enter into the conflict with others. So students, with these all deliberations about the different theories dealing with the origin and the concept of the conflict, we will be completing our block 2. And for your quick revision, I would like to just summarize that what we have basically gone through in this last unit of block 2. So in this last unit of block 2, basically we started our discussion about what are different theories of the conflict. So first of all, we had discussion about nurtured theorists. So under nurtured theories, we have inherency theories, we have contingency theories, and we have interactionist theories. These kind of theories basically depend upon the nature or the human gene or biological roots of the individual, which can lead for the origin of the conflict. Then we had deliberation about human nature and the conflict. This was basically biological and socio-biological theories. So in that we have gone for instinct theory. The instinct theory says that aggressive behavior is basically rooted in human instinct, and instinct impulses is the source of the human aggression and destructive behavior. Then we had seen the criticism of biological and socio-biological theories, because anthropologists and sociologists, they do not agree with the proposition of these theorists, and they say that human behavior or human instinct cannot be traced to the biological roots. After that, we had understanding about psychological and socio-psychological theories. So according to psychoanalysts, unfulfilled psychological needs can also incite an individual to go for violence or instinctive impulses. Basically, the motivational theories say that the origin of aggression is basically a blocked energy of frustration which is produced in varied social and psychological settings. Then we had gone for different interpretation of psychoanalysts. Then we have seen the statement of violence of 1986, that what are scientifically incorrect, which has been told earlier, that for example, it is scientifically incorrect to say that we have inherited a tendency to make war from our animal ancestors. It is also scientifically incorrect that war and any other of violent behavior is genetically programmed and into our human nature. It is also scientifically incorrect to say that course of human evolution there has been a selection of aggressive behavior more than other kinds of behavior. It is also scientifically incorrect to say that humans have a violent brain. It is also scientifically incorrect to say that war is caused by instinct or any single motive. So all those previous propositions have been criticized, and they have told that there could be some other reasons or logics behind emergence of conflict. So another set of theories came, which is social process theories and system theories. Social process theory says that conflict and conflict resolution are basically a process. So system theory says that conflict is basically a system of relationship. It seeks to find out parts of a social system, that social institutions work together, and part of social system may function or dysfunction. So when they dysfunction, there is not a complete harmony, and when there is no complete harmony, then emergence of conflict will take place. Then we had understanding about social structural theories. Social structural theory says that conflict is inherent in social structure, and social structures and institutions may also cause structural violence. Then we have seen the famous classification of violence by Johann Galtung. Johann Galtung basically gave three kinds of violence. One is direct or overt violence, another is indirect or structural violence, and third was cultural violence. And finally, we have understanding or deliberation about three different theories. One is human need theory, second is resource theory, and third is relative deprivation theory. Human need theory says that every individual or human being has certain basic or universal human needs, and when these needs remain unsatisfied, then it will lead for conflict. So when any individual or institution is going for conflict resolution, they should look into satisfy those basic human needs of an individual. Resource theory says that fighting amongst individual or the group or the parties about the resources which are very scarce in the nature or limited, so conflict can take place. And finally, relative deprivation theory, which says that what an individual or society or group have been deprived, what they have been promised or what they have been expecting, and what we are actually getting. So if the difference between the actual and the expectation is much higher, it will lead for aggression and people may enter into conflict with others. So with this, we are completing our blog 2. I now wish that we will meet again in the next class, and we will be starting our deliberation, our discussion, our understanding about the next blog, that is the blog 3. Till then, bye bye.